She was my woman. As she deceived me, I watched and went out of my mind. My Delilah. Why, Delilah?
After this, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah who lived in the Sorek Valley. Judges 16-4.
Delilah, Hebrew. Delilah, meaning one who dallies or entices. Delilah was tasked by the Philistines to betray Samson. The Philistines felt greatly threatened by Samson, as he almost single-handedly fought against them. Delilah's name became significant when she discovered the secret of Samson's extraordinary strength, which lay in his uncut hair. The large reward she received for this effort suggests that Delilah was possibly not a Philistine. Samson, Hebrew, SHIMSHON, Greek, Samson. He was a judge of Israel from the tribe of Dan, and the last judge led by the Spirit before Samuel. The name SHIMSHON, derived from the Hebrew word SHEMESH, meaning son, might imply little son. His parents named him in hope of his heroism, strength like the sun, and extraordinary energy. Before his birth, Samson was dedicated to God as a Nazirite for life. Though a Nazirite, he sometimes acted recklessly regarding his vows. He trusted in God more often than not, and was given extraordinary strength by the Spirit of Yahweh to perform miraculous feats. However, through his disobedience to his Nazirite vows, Samson often neglected to honor God. In his early adulthood, he notably violated the prohibition against touching corpses and drinking wine during feasts or drinking contests. He also failed to maintain the Nazirite purity for God by having relations with a prostitute in Gaza and with Delilah. He deeply resented the Philistines, despite the preference of some for peaceful coexistence. He had a witty and often bitter sense of humor. However, he lacked wisdom, and his strong passions made him stubborn, leading him to lose the God-given strength, and God departed from him. Samson, the judge from Dan, was born at the beginning of the 40-year oppression by the Philistines, around 1090 BC. Samson likely began his mission soon after the major battle near Aphek around 1070 BC, when the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant and burned the city of Shiloh. Samson fell in love with Delilah. Some interpreters believe Delilah was his wife, but if that were the case, he would likely have brought her to his home. Others believe he attempted to court Delilah to make her his wife. However, there are many reasons to suspect that Samson's affection for Delilah was purely driven by desire, and that he stayed with her in moral compromise. It is uncertain whether Delilah was an Israelite or a Philistine. Even if she were an Israelite, which is unlikely, she certainly had the heart of a Philistine. The Philistine city rulers took advantage of Delilah to betray Samson. They told Delilah that their plan was to humble Samson or subdue him. They promised not to harm Samson, only to defeat him so he wouldn't hurt them anymore. It seems they sincerely kept this promise, as even when he was in their power, they refrained from killing him, though the blade that cut his hair could have easily slit his throat. What they wanted most was to discover the source of Samson's great strength and how he could be bound. They may have imagined that he possessed a charm or talisman that granted him his power. They were certain that if they could secure this charm or talisman from him, he could be controlled. Since they already had some understanding of his weakness, they hoped to guess his riddle again by enlisting Delilah's help. They persuaded Delilah by explaining how her cooperation would benefit them, possibly assuring her that neither Samson nor she would come to any harm. For this task, they offered a significant reward, promising her 100 silver coins each, totaling 5,500, which equated to a considerable amount of shekels. With this payment, Delilah was bribed to betray the man she pretended to love. Behold how horrifying the wickedness that grows from the love of money can be. Our blessed Savior, too, was betrayed for money by someone he called a friend, even with a kiss. How unsurprising, then, that people of Delilah's nature, like harlots, act deceitfully. Those who lose their integrity in one aspect are likely to lose it in others as well. Samson used various tactics to silence Delilah each time and keep his secret for a long period. Delilah repeatedly asked him why he was so strong and how he could be bound and subdued, pretending that she was merely curious. She thought it impossible that Samson could be bound by anything other than her charms. When Delilah pressed him repeatedly, Samson told her, 1. That he could be bound with 7 fresh bowstrings. This attempt was made, but it failed. Samson broke the bowstrings as easily as burned flax snaps when it meets fire. 2. When Delilah continued to press him, Samson said that with 2 new ropes, he could be restrained and rendered as manageable as any other man. This attempt was also made but was unsuccessful. He snapped the new ropes from his hands as if they were merely threads. When Delilah kept pleading with him to reveal his secret and scolded him for mocking her for so long, Samson finally told her that if his 7 locks of hair were woven, it would make a significant difference in him. This answer was closer to the truth than his previous answers, but it still did not succeed. His strength indeed seemed to lie in his hair, as when this attempt was made, he simply pulled up the weaving pin and the loom warp with his hair's strength alone. In all these trials, it's hard to say whether more of Samson's weakness or Delilah's wickedness was on display. Is there anything more evil than Delilah's relentless and unreasonable pressure, urging Samson to reveal a secret that she knew would endanger his life if it were in anyone's hands but hers? Is there anything more despicable, treacherous, false, and deceitful than Delilah, who laid Samson's head on her lap as though he were her beloved, while at the same time plotting to betray him and hand him over to those who hated him to death? Is there anything weaker than Samson, who kept indulging someone who so obviously meant him harm? That Samson would keep listening to such a bold and dangerous request for so long, one aimed at causing his own ruin. Why did he keep returning and laying his head on the lap of that woman, even though he'd been so often awakened by the danger signal? The Philistines are upon you, Samson. It's hard to imagine anyone as foolish and completely irrational as Samson was at that moment. But lust is one of those things that clouds the mind. It's hard to tell what Samson meant by letting Delilah keep testing him to see if she could weaken and subdue him. Delilah continued to nag Samson day after day until he could no longer bear living with her. So why didn't Samson leave her then? Because he was entangled by what is wrongly called the power of love, though it was truly only lust. This lust perfectly enchanted and intoxicated Samson, and by its power, see how Delilah subdued him. He told her all his heart. God allowed Samson to act foolishly, to punish him for giving in to his corrupt desires. The angel who prophesied his birth said nothing about his great strength, but only that he would be a Nazirite, and specifically, that no razor would touch his head. His dedication as a Nazirite to God would be his strength, for he would be strengthened with all power according to the glorious might of the Spirit, working powerfully in him. Thus, his strength, through a divine promise, not by nature, could serve as a symbol and shadow of the spiritual strength of believers. That's why the symbol of his Naziriteship, his hair, was the guarantee of his strength. If he lost the symbol of his Naziriteship, he knew he would lose his strength. If I am shaven, then I will no longer be a Nazirite, and at that point, my strength will depart from me. His physical strength was bound up with his hair, which in itself was otherwise ordinary. This teaches us to revere divine ordinances and to seek God's grace and its continuation, only by the means of grace through which He has appointed for us to come before Him. These means of grace are the Word, sacraments, and prayer. In these earthen vessels, this treasure is held.